Hey everybody, I got a very unique email that came to me and an image that was sent, and he asked me how I would approach creating a very, I'd say, high contrast look and detailed look like an Ansel Adams image. So this is called the art of contrast in black and white images. And my hands are going to be basically handcuffed because I'm going to give you the guidelines he told me I had to follow. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist, pushing ourselves out of the box creatively. All right, so this is going to be something very unique and new to me, and I need to give you some background information before I work on an image, but a person who does not want to be named sent me an image, and I'll talk about that image in a few minutes, but it's a black and white image, and what he wants is for me to use my imagination, creativity. He goes, I want it to look like an Ansel Adams type print. I want it to be very detailed and contrasty, in black and white. How would I approach that in Photoshop? But here's where my hands are tied behind my back, or at least one is stuck behind my back there and tied up. And that is, number one, I cannot use Adobe Camera Raw, which means no Lightroom. This has to be 100% done in Photoshop, and I can't use Adobe Camera Raw within the Photoshop framework. Why? I don't know why. I think that this person is very new to Photoshop, because the second thing he said, I want you to use, as much as possible, simple, basic tools. So that's going to limit my choices. And then the third thing is, again, he wants that very high contrast look like an Ansel Adams, print would be. And here's the kicker. And number 4, it's a JPEG image he sent me in black and white. Are we ready to get into this one? My hands are tied on this, but let's get into Photoshop and let's take a look at the image and let me start working on it. Are we ready? Let's do it. All right, as I dive into Photoshop here, I want to give you some background information here. Number 1 is, this is when I go into the image, this is going to be totally scripted, not edited at all. So my point is that I might make mistakes or change my mind on things. In other words, I might try a technique and go, gee, I wonder how this would look. No, I didn't like that, so I'm going to back out of it. I don't know if this is going to be beneficial to you if you're going to like this kind of stuff occasionally. I can't promise that I can edit people's images a lot on this channel. I don't think we should do that. Doing it occasionally, I don't mind doing that, but I need to emphasize something. When I edit an image, it now becomes my image. In other words, how I would approach things. I want you to understand that hopefully you pick up some workflow techniques and things, but hopefully you're going to move in a different direction with it to personalize it, because what I do is based on what I want to do, right? You might look at this and say, well, I would have done part of what you did, but I'm going to move in a different direction, which is great because it's unlimited ways we can actually attach that or attack this image. So before you look at the image and analyze it and start to work, I want to show you a couple tools I'm thinking about using. So let's take a look at Photoshop here. And I've got a couple sample images here. This strip here in black and white, and then this gradient. So remember, the image I'm going to work on is a JPEG. We'll look at the image here in a few minutes. But I want to come over here to take a look at the tool here in layers. And I'm going to go to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk here. And we've got some new tools that came out I guess like 2-3 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. But we have something here called color and vibrance, which we've never had before. I'm not going to use that because we're not dealing with color here. Clarity and dehaze, again, that's in the raw side, right, of Photoshop, the camera raw area. And now they brought it into Photoshop. So I'm thinking about using that. And I'm going to demo something here in a minute. I'm not going to use grain at all, even though you could. That's an optional. But I'm also going to use something called brightness and contrast to keep it very simple, because normally I would probably go into curves or levels, but this person wants this to be very simple as possible using basic tools. So I'm going to pull this up right now to show you something. A lot of times in Photoshop, we don't hear about this too often unless you dig deep in their profile on their website. But when we get an update, a lot of times they just showcase to us, and you see on YouTube channels, oh, look what they did. They added this feature, that feature, blah, 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 whatever. But a lot of times they don't talk about, they took an existing feature that we've had for years, but they enhance the algorithm to improve the performance of that. So one of those is right here, and that is called the brightness and contrast non-destructive layer I put here. And you're going to see something called use legacy. This is the old algorithm. So let me show you something right now. If I take brightness and move it all the way to the right, this is what I get. And probably not going to be able to see this, but as I go from the light areas, I can see that very last. There's a difference between the two. Probably won't show up on YouTube because again, they actually compress the videos, but I can see that when I move it to the far right. If I go to the left, I get this, and I can see all the variants here on, from the blacks through the grays, but that's pushing it way to the left. Now, if I go to legacy, so I'm going to activate legacy. If I push the brightness all the way to the right side, this is what I get, and I'm losing detail right here, all the way from this point all the way there. And then if I go the opposite direction, I get this. And again, I'm losing a lot of detail in the black areas using the legacy algorithm. Now, let me turn it off and let's go to contrast. If I push the contrast to the left, far left, this is what I get. If I move it all the way to the right, this is what I get. Okay, and this is what the newer algorithm that we've had for quite a while. Let me go back to 0. Now, let me add to use the old legacy algorithm. I push this all the way to the left now, and this is what I get. Look, it's just grayed out. And if I go all the way to the right, look at that. Okay, so big difference, right, in the algorithm. Now, this is a big deal, especially when it comes to black and white, or even in color, if we have say a clear sky, but yet there's a gradient, say deep blue to a really light blue. A lot of times, especially in JPEGs, because it's an 8-bit image instead of a raw image, which is 16-bit, that 16-bit has a lot more dynamic range and information in it, where a JPEG with 8-bit is less, right? So we tend to get banding, but unbelievable how they're enhancing these algorithms to help eliminate any kind of banding in these JPEG images that we couldn't do, say, 10, 15 years ago. It would be awful and stuff. So I just wanted you to see that. And I want you to just quickly take a look at this one. This is a gradient, almost like if we had a sky, let's say from top to bottom, but I'm going left to right here. So again, if I just add, let's go to brightness and contrast again. And if I just use the newest algorithm and push this brightness all the way to the left, this is what I get, all the way to the right. I don't get any banding. Now, I might get banding. It's almost starting to start here. It probably will show up a lot worse, let's say, on the video, because again, videos are crunched down and stuff and optimized for the web. But that's what I get. So if I turn on use legacy and do the same thing, this is what I get. Look at that solid line right there. And if I move it all the way to the right, I'm getting that. Okay, so that is using the old legacy one. Now, let's take a look at turning off legacy and go to contrast and move that to the left. I get this, and then move this all the way to the right. I get that. So nothing in banding. So let me go back to legacy, and let's do the same thing. All the way to the left, it just all grays out again, and all the way to the right, you're going to get that. So again, unbelievable the power of this tool now, that a lot of people maybe would go, oh, we shouldn't even go there. I think it does a great job. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's jump into the black and white image, and let's see how I approach this to give that high contrast black and white look. Let's do it. All right, so let's jump right back into Photoshop here. This is where I left off. I'm going to get rid of that image right there. We don't need to see that. And that one. All right, some background information on this image. Number one, obviously it's not my image. This was sent to me. Number two, The person that sent it to me, it's not their image either. It came from another photographer, and I don't even know who that photographer is. So I need to emphasize, this is for educational purposes only. I would never put my name on this. I would never take claim or, that this is my image. I'm just using this, again, as a request. How would I approach and edit this image? So let's take a look at this. And we go to image size. And, okay, so this is, boy, this, decent print, 20 by, say, 13, 300 res, 6,000 pixels on the long side there. So this is a pretty good high-res image. But again, it is a JPEG, which means it's an 8-bit image, which is less information. Now, looking at this person wants a very high contrasty type look. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate the layer. So Control-J, Command-J on a Mac. And I apologize if I forget to give the Mac version of my shortcuts, but I should, if I forget, maybe I'll come back and add that later. But by the way, if you stick to the end, I'm going to ask an important question that has to do with this channel to help me out. So please do stick to the end here. Now, again, as I mentioned, I'm going to move in a certain direction to try something, and I might not like what I want, so I'm going to pull back and try something else. So the first thing I'm looking at is the sky does not have much detail at all. And, when you look at Ansel Adams, very contrasty, very detailed information. And whether I lose some detail in black or in the white areas is a personal choice. I mean, so I'm going to work on the sky here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to make a selection. I could mask this in manually in different places, but I'm going to go to the select drop-down menu here, and I'm just going to choose sky. And I'm just curious how well Photoshop will pick up the sky in a black and white image. A lot of times it does have trouble. Oh, not too bad, but tends to do better in a color image than it does black and white sometimes. But okay, now that I have that selected right there, I'm going to go to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk. And I'm going to choose, well, let's start out with the brightness and contrast one right now. So when I do that, it actually creates a mask here. And if you remember the rule of a mask, white reveals, black conceals. So as I go to properties here to move my sliders, only the area that's in white, which should be the sky, is going to be adjusted. So if I move this to the left versus to the right, you can see what's happening there. Okay, so again, I might want to play with this a little bit. I might want to add some contrast with this. Let's really push the contrast. And again, because this is going to be on video, I can still see detail here. It's holding up pretty well. But again, in the video, it may not show that at all. I'm also going to do this as a workflow technique. I want to add some clarity into the sky. And to do that, I need to make a selection. So I'm just going to hold the Control key down. That would be Command on a Mac. And I'm going to click right there on my mask. So Control click, that'd be Command click on a Mac, and it would, reselect my selection there of the sky, because I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add clarity and dehaze. And so when I do that, notice again here, clarity and dehaze. So as I move the sliders and stuff, when I go to properties, it's only going to affect the white area there. Now, a different way of doing this, I'm going to delete this. Let me delete the whole thing. Another way of doing this is if, oops, I didn't want to go that far. I want to leave that there. Another way of applying this, if I came to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk, but I did not make a selection, and I go over here to clarity and dehaze, and it does that, and I go, oh, shoot, I only want this to affect the sky, and I forgot to make the selection of the sky. Well, what I could do is just go here and hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac, click and drag it to the very top, and it'll just ask me, hey, do you want to replace the layer mask? Yes. And so it, again, did the same thing for me. So it doesn't matter how you approach this. But now that I'm on this layer right here, so make sure I selected that. So I come over to Properties, and if I play with dehaze, I'm just going to over-exaggerate this, moving it to the left versus moving it to the right. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. Okay, and in clarity, let's push that. Wow. Okay, left. I'm going to push that all the way to the right. Yeah. Okay, I can still see detail there. You may not be able to see that on the video. Let me go back to contrast and brightness and see what happens here when I play with this. Okay, I'm just about to lose, when I move to the left here, the brightness. I'm just starting to lose a little bit of detail in there. Oops, yeah, let me go back here. Contrast. Yeah, I'm going to leave contrast all the way over to the right side. And very dark and moody, this is what the person wants. So I might back off a little bit on my brightness. I'll leave it about right there. I can always go back to change this. Everything I'm doing here is again, non-destructive on these layers. Okay, so I've got that done. Now what I'm thinking about is, again, I want this to be very detailed. I'm going to select the guys on the motorcycles here. And I don't even know what, I know they're motorcycles, but there's a certain name for those because they're 3 wheels. Maybe it's a tri-motorcycle. Again, I'm not into motorcycle racing or whatever. So I'm selecting the layer, and I'm going to grab this tool over here, the object selection tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag over this area right here and see if it'll pick them up. Let it do its job. Ooh, not bad. Now I'm going to hold the shift key, and I'm going to, with the shift key held down and not let go, I'm going to click and drag over the other 2 riders there. And now I'll let go and let it analyze that, see if it'll select it. Okay, so I'm multi-selecting, and I'm going to do the 3rd one right here. So again, I'm moving over here, holding the shift key down. Again, click and drag. So again, by adding the shift key, what I'm telling Photoshop to do, excuse me, losing my voice, I'm telling it to add to my selection. Let me grab some water here. Okay, now that I have that done, I'm going to add the Oreo cookie dipped in milk. Let's go to clarity and dehaze. And I'm just going to play with this and see what happens. Okay, so again, white reveals, black conceals, right? So the motorcycle people are in white, so they're going to be affected by this. So if I go over here to dehaze, let me move this to the left a little bit. I'm over-exaggerating so we can see this, and move it to the right. So we can see that I'm affecting just the motorcycles. Okay, and the people on the motorcycles. So I might move that up a little bit. Well, I'm going to move it back a little bit on dehaze. And in clarity, I'm going to push the clarity up. Now, again, I'm over-exaggerating everything here because, again, videos are compressed when it goes on YouTube, and it might not show as much. So if I was going to print this, I probably would pull back on this stuff. But again, for demo purposes, I'm sort of playing with this. Just moving around with the dehaze. See what happens. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so again, these are all non-destructive. Just a little tip here. A lot of times when you're working on stuff, your eyes adjust a little bit to what you're doing. And it's best to, when you think you're done, save your image, come back to it later in the day or tomorrow, and you got a fresh look. And you might look at that and go, oh, I think I went too far on this or too far on that. I need to pull back a little bit. So when I get done with this, that's what I would do if that was my image. I would never print this or showcase this yet. I would wait, look at it with a fresh set of eyeballs, and make any tweaks and modifications on that. Okay, so now what I'm thinking is I'd like to add a little bit more contrast and stuff and information on the ground levels here. So the way I'm going to approach this is, let's do this. I'm going to go to this layer right here, this mask, I should say, right there. And again, I'm going to hold the Control key down, Command on a Mac, click on that, and that activates the sky area, which is fine. I'm going to come back down here to the image, and I'm going to go over here to add, let's go to clarity and dehaze again. Let it do its thing. And again, if I go over here, what is it doing? Well, it's affecting the sky, right? Because that's the selection. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to do the foreground. So I want to go to my mask, and I want to invert that. So just do Control-I, Command-I on a Mac, and that inverts your mask. So now when I go back to here on this layer, and I go to Properties, and I go to Clarity, as I change this, you can see it's affecting the foreground. Let me push this all the way to the right. So again, I would just make my adjustment here on pull back on dehaze. Let's push up dehaze a little bit. Let's adjust my contrast. And again, a lot of personal preference on this, right? How far do you want to go with this? Again, I would come back with fresh eyeballs tomorrow or later in the day to make any tweaks or modification. Now, I might be done with that and say, okay, this is what I started with. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac, click on the eyeball of the first layer. This is the original image right there. And then this is what I did right now that has that very strong detail, contrast look that almost like if Ansel Adams was actually taking this photo. Now, would I print this image? Well, number one, it's not my image, right? So I need to remember that. But if this was my image, I know in working with, and again, this is very subjective, with working with Joel Grimes, is one of my major mentors. He always taught me that before you go to print, zoom in on your image and look around for any anomalies or things that might be distracting. And I know from his personal taste and mine sometimes too, but again, everybody's going to be different. Anything that's like really bright white tends to really pop and stand out and could be distracting when you print an image. So you might want to remove those with one of the remove tools. I might come over here and choose this, the remove tool that we have, and just go over here, and I got to be on the image, by the way, and just click and drag over that, click and drag over that. Let's say that one. I'm not going to do everything. Just come over here to the checkbox to accept that, and let it do its thing. Let it render out. Take a few seconds for that to go out. Now, again, some people might say, no, I would never do that. Then some people would actually burn it down so the white isn't as strong, because it does become very distractive. The eyes tend to go to that, and if you don't want to have people's eyes go to those strong white areas, consider either eliminating it or burning it down. And again, it's personal taste in how you approach this. All right, so hopefully you're learning something here on the workflow. I'm not sure if this is helpful or not. This is the way I would approach this project right here. And again, very strong detailed. You're coming from a black and white image, but unbelievable with the new tools that we have in Photoshop on how far you can push a JPEG image versus, a few years ago, I couldn't do anything that great. I definitely would have to be in RAW. So again, my big question for you here at the end is this kind of stuff helpful to you? If you occasionally, and I can't promise I could do everybody, I don't want to be bombarded with images, but if this is helpful, I'm open-minded to selecting somebody's image that they sent me and edit the image and show how I would approach the image. And that's based on my personal vision and taste, right? Everybody's taste is going to be different, which is fine. The whole intent is to teach you some workflow techniques. And I was really handicapped here. I was trying to use some basic, simple tools as much as possible. Normally, I probably would not use, well, I did do a good job, though. I was really surprised at the brightness and contrast feature that we have here. But again, I probably would go into curves or to levels because it gives me a little bit better control. But unbelievable, again, what the, the brightness and contrast tool does. By the way, at the end here, let me just jump in here quickly because you guys seen me do this a lot. I'm going to go to the very top of my stack. Shift-Control-Alt-E. There'd be Shift-Command-E on a Mac, and that's just creating what they call a visible stamp layer. Took all the layers, consolidated it down to one layer. And then you guys know that I do this a lot, and that is I'm going to add multiply to this. I'm going to add a mask. So I'm going to come down here at the bottom to add a mask. I might pull this down a little bit in opacity to scrub down to maybe close to 50% or so. And then on the mask, I would just grab my paintbrush, so B for brush, make sure it's a little bit bigger, make sure it's a soft edge brush, and I'm going to paint at about 40% opacity, so I just tapped on the number 4, which automatically made my opacity at 40%. And then I want to bring attention to these areas here. So I'm just painting in these areas. I might paint toward the bottom here, maybe over here. And again, optional, maybe I want to go into the sky because maybe it's too dark here. And I want to bring in some details, so I might swipe across there a little bit. So you can see this in the mask. So as I go and paint in these different areas, again, it's just the look that you want to give it. Maybe pull the opacity down a little bit more there. But this is what's happening. Before, after, almost like a customized vignette. And again, personal taste on that, right? There's no right or wrong on this. All right, so I would just, hey, take one of your images. If you think it's a good idea for me to occasionally have somebody send me an image, by the way, email address is right down here, and that is stephenphotoartist@gmail.com. The link is also in the show notes. Make comments. Do you think this is a good idea to take somebody's image and show you my vision on how I would approach this? Would that be helpful in the future? And again, I don't want to get bogged down on this, but doing it once in a while, I don't have a problem doing that. All right, until next time, people, let's get that camera out. Let's think creatively out of the box. Again, literally out of the box. Until next time, see ya.